You're going to get a piece of information in about 30 seconds that you will not be able to unknow. It is a number, a projection, and the moment you hear it, you will understand something about time that no one bothered to explain to you when you were young enough for it to matter most. But first, let's talk about the $500. You know this feeling already. The money arrives in your account, and it is already gone. Not gone in a dramatic way. Not a crisis. Gone in the ordinary way that every adult's money disappears. Rent, insurance, the credit card that's sitting at a balance you are slowly, quietly managing. The $500 is spoken for before it clears. That is not a personal failure. That is the standard condition. That is the water most people swim in their whole lives without ever naming it. Something changed recently, though. You saw a post, maybe a video, maybe a thread on a forum you were scrolling at midnight. Someone ran the numbers on what happens if you take $500 a month and put it somewhere it can grow for long enough. The number they showed was not the kind of number you look at once. It was the kind you look at, look away, and look back at, because somewhere between the first and second look, something shifted. You felt the distance between where you are and where that number lives. And underneath that, quieter, something that felt like the first edge of understanding that time is the only thing in this equation you cannot manufacture more of. This story starts with $500, it ends somewhere else entirely. Before this becomes a story about returns and compounding and crossover points, it is a story about a Tuesday. On a Tuesday, you open a brokerage account. Not because you have done months of research, not because you have a strategy fully formed. You open it because you finally understand that the cost of not starting is also a cost. It does not arrive as a bill. It does not show up on a statement. It accumulates in the gap between what your future holds and what it could have held. And you will not be able to see that gap clearly until you're standing on the far side of it. You split the $500. $300 goes into a Roth IRA on the first of the month. $200 goes into a standard brokerage account on the 15th. You buy a low-cost index fund that tracks the broad market. You set the transfers to automatic. And then you do the hardest thing the entire strategy will ever ask of you. You leave it alone. Here is the question that will not leave you alone in the first few weeks. What if this is wrong? What if the market drops the month after you start? What if there was a smarter way to do this? A better fund? A better split? A better time? The doubt is not irrational. It is just irrelevant. Because the version of you that waits for certainty before starting is the version of you that never starts. There is no signal that will arrive and tell you the conditions are finally right. The conditions are never right. The $500 leaves the account on schedule regardless. That is the whole system. Everything else is just what happens while the system runs. 3 months in, the account holds $1,700. The market moved both directions. The net result looks like rounding error. This is the moment most people leave. Not because they made a bad decision, because the human brain runs on feedback, visible, legible evidence that an action produced an outcome. And in the first year of investing $500 a month, the feedback is nearly invisible. The account grows. The growth is real, but it does not feel real. And that gap between what is true and what feels true is where most people's financial futures quietly end. The person who stays past month 3 is not more disciplined than the person who leaves. They are not more financially sophisticated. They understand one thing differently. The feedback is coming. It just runs on a longer delay than they are used to. By the end of year 1, the account holds $6,200. The market returned close to its historical average and added roughly $200 to what you put in. The number is not the point. The point is what you did not do. You did not spend that $500 in January or February or any month after. The money that stayed is now a different category of asset than the money that left. The money that left is gone. The money that stayed is running. You also changed something this year that the account balance does not reflect. Before January, $500 felt essential, necessary, spoken for. By December, you had restructured the month around $500 less, and you did not feel it the way you expected to. The lifestyle adjusted, quietly, without drama. That adjustment is worth more than the $6,200 in the account. The account can recover from a bad year. The habit of treating one fixed amount as untouchable cannot be bought. It has to be built month by month until it becomes the thing you do before you do anything else. Year 3, the account sits at $19,800. Something is different now in how the number reads. It no longer feels like money you saved. It feels like something that is operating without you. The contributions from year 1 have been compounding inside the contributions from year 2, which are compounding inside the contributions from year 3. Each layer of capital has been in the market for a different duration and is growing at its own rate. The result is a balance that is climbing faster than the rate at which you are adding to it. There is a threshold you're approaching. The moment when the account's annual return exceeds your annual contribution at $19,800, growing at roughly 7%. The account generates about $1,385 in a year. You're putting in $6,000. The returns are less than a quarter of your input right now. But watch what happens to that ratio over time. Every year your contribution stays flat. Every year the account gets larger. Every year the return produced by the account grows. You're not moving the finish line. The finish line is moving toward you. And then there is the question no one thinks to ask at year 3. What would have happened to this money if you had spent it? Not the total, not the $19,800. Just month by month, what did $500 become when you chose not to keep it? A dinner here, a trip there, items purchased and forgotten inside a year. The money that left has no record, no remaining value. The money that stayed has both that contrast invisible in month 1 is starting to be legible now. 5 years the account holds $41,000. You put in $30,000 of your own money. The market and compounding have added $11,000 that you did not earn, did not negotiate for, did not trade hours to produce. $11,000 generated by the fact that money left in a growing market earns a return, and that return earns a return. And that process does not require your involvement once it has started. It requires only that you not interrupt it. In year 4, the market fell sharply. Not a small dip, a real drop. The kind that makes headlines. The kind that prompts people to call their financial advisors in a panic. You watch the account lose ground across several weeks. You did not sell. You did not pause the automatic transfer. You did nothing, which is the hardest possible action to take when a number you have spent 5 years building is moving in the wrong direction. The account recovered. It always has across every comparable historical period. But you did not know that with the certainty you needed when it was happening. You stayed anyway. That decision to hold while the number fell is the decision that separates the investors who build something from the investors who only participate when it is comfortable. Comfort is not a financial strategy. It never was. At $41,000, the account is no longer a savings account. It is infrastructure. It is the foundation of a structure you are still too early in to see fully. But you can feel the difference now between the weight of $41,000 working for you and the weight of nothing. The difference is not in the bank balance. It is in the way you think about risk, about time, about what money is for. 10 years, the account is $96,000. You are about to cross $100,000. And that threshold matters more than it should and exactly as much as it does. Below it, the account felt like a vehicle, a savings mechanism, something you were filling up. Above it, it starts to feel like a system, a structure with enough mass that it behaves differently. The returns in a strong year now approach $7,000. Your annual contribution is $6,000. The account is generating for the first time more in a single year than you're putting into it. This is the crossover point. This is what year 3 was approaching. The moment when the capital already inside the account becomes a more significant driver of growth than the new money you are adding, you are still contributing the $500 every month. You will not stop. But the mathematical reality has shifted. The account is no longer waiting on you. It is running ahead of you. You also run a number you have never run before. You calculate what you would have accumulated if you had started 5 years later at 30 instead of 25. Same contribution, same rate of return, same discipline. The difference is approximately $58,000. $58,000 is the price of 5 years of delay. It does not appear on any bill. No one sends you an invoice, but it is real and it is permanent, and there is no version of year 30 in which you get it back. There is something else at year 10 that is harder to quantify. A man, a coworker, who has been watching you decline invitations to things that cost money for a decade, asks you one afternoon if the investing thing has been worth it. You tell him the number. He goes quiet for a moment. Then he says he's been meaning to start. You nod. You do not say what you're thinking. You have been doing this long enough to know what meaning to start costs. 15 years, $184,000. You put in $90,000 of your own money. The account holds $184,000. The market contributed $94,000 that you never worked for, never worried about producing, never had to show up for. It arrived because capital invested in a diversified market index grows over time, and you did not interrupt that process. The ratio is going to keep shifting. At year 20, the market's contribution will surpass yours by a wider margin. At year 30, you will look back at your own $90,000 of input as a relatively small portion of the total. That inversion is the thing most people cannot hold in their heads when they are staring at month 1. The idea that the money they put in eventually becomes the smaller number. Here is what no chart shows you. The account at $184,000 does not feel the way you imagined it would feel when you were 25. It feels quieter than that. It feels less like an achievement and more like a condition. The way a structural wall holds a building without announcing itself, you are not thinking about the account. Most days, the account does not require you to think about it. That is precisely why it works. The one thing that has surprised you that you did not expect when you started is what you understand now about the people who never did. Not judgment, understanding, you know what month 1 feels like? You know what year 1 looks like from the inside. You know that the gap between what it is and what it feels like in those early months is wide enough that most people do not stay. The ones who left were not wrong to feel what they felt. They were just wrong about what the feeling meant. 20 years the account holds $295,000. You contributed $120,000. The compounding added $175,000. For every dollar you put in, the market returned $146 on top of it. That ratio is not a projection. It is the arithmetic result of a historically average annual return applied consistently across 20 years without interruption. The account generates in an average year just over $20,000 in returns. That is more than a significant portion of American households earn in 6 months of full-time work, produced by a balance sitting in an index fund requiring no labor, no negotiation, no performance. Review. It arrived because you started at 25 and did not stop. This year, your city goes through a period of economic anxiety, layoffs, shuttered storefronts. The kind of ambient financial dread that spreads through a community and finds everyone eventually. You feel it. You're not immune to context, but something is different in how you feel it. You are watching from a position that did not exist 20 years ago. The dread has less grip when there is a foundation underneath it. The 500 never changed. You earned considerably more by year 20 than you did at year 1, but the contribution stayed fixed. The difference between what you earned and what you spent improved. The 500 did not move because the system that the 500 is part of was already working. You did not fix something that was not broken. 30 years, $543,000. You put in $180,000. The market put in $363,000. You are 55 years old, and you have an account that is worth more than $500,000 that began as a Tuesday, an automatic transfer, and a decision to leave it alone. This is not the only thing you have. There is equity in the home. There is a retirement account that has been receiving contributions for decades. There are other small positions accumulated in the years when there was extra. The 500 a month account is one piece of a larger picture, but it is the piece that started first. And because it started first, it has had the longest runway and the longest runway produced, the largest share of what compounding added. You think sometimes about the version of yourself that did not start? Not with regret, with something closer to arithmetic. That version is not a worse person. They did not make a moral error. They made a timing error. One that compounded quietly in the background for 30 years, the same way the account did, just in the opposite direction. Somewhere tonight, there is a person around 25 years old looking at their phone. They have $500 that has not been assigned a purpose yet. It landed in their account this week and it is still unclaimed. In the next few days, something will claim it. A bill, a plan, a moment of ordinary spending that will feel completely justified because it is. The 500 is not the issue. The decision is the issue. They do not know yet that the choice they are about to make is not a $500 choice. It is a $363,000 choice. And here's the thing that keeps coming back. The question you have never fully been able to answer. How many of them in that moment with the 500 still unclaimed are one video away from doing it differently?